out there in the
I'm trying to do a little Joe Persky
Super
here.
Bowl. What time?
Hey, was that like, I had to work on my.
Thank you.
Okay, calling the meeting, it's the board meeting for the Stearns County Board of Commissioners to order. Will you all please rise and join me for a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, Randy. Because we have, the record should reflect that all members are present, but because we have one member that's remote, do we need to also do the roll call that way? Or no, so I can just acknowledge it. Okay, great. Let the record reflect that all members are present with one, Commissioner Bertram, remote, as was noticed. It is good to see you, even if you're experiencing really nice weather, which we're not quite there yet, but thank you. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Yes.
Good morning. Good. Everything works. We tested it beforehand. Jeff, I will keep looking to make sure if you've got questions or comments. And then just so everybody here or watching knows, we'll be taking roll call votes with all of our votes that we happen to have to do because we have one member that's remote. It's really great to be able to use technology this way. Okay, first off, approval of the agenda. Dr. Williams, is there any changes?
No changes, just on your desk, but within the electronic agenda was an updated federal legislative issues, and that's part of your consent agenda.
Right, okay, good. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Persky. Seeing no discussion or questions, all in favor will be signifying by saying aye as Mr. Schreifels goes through our roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Notch.
Aye.
Commissioner Persky.
Aye.
Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Bergstrom. Jeff.
Randy, you may have to move your microphone.
Jeff, we're approving the minutes. We need you to approve or not approve.
I'm not hearing Randy at all.
Yes,
Okay,
we're going to
I
get
moved
him to.
my mic. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we're going to ask him to,
Okay.
he's adjusting his mic, and we thought we'd, for today's purposes, have you go last to give you time to unmute if you need to, because we know that can be a little
Sure.
tricky. Yes,
Randy, might I suggest, can we do the approval on the agendas, or excuse me, on the votes? Can we do it verbally and then just ask, just to expedite things? I mean, that would be no different than if he was present, other than you're going to be able to ask him. You'll be able to get our votes here.
Okay. Sure.
Then we don't have to do roll call on each of us, because we'll be verbally.
yeah, we usually do it the other way, but I don't have a problem with that as long as Randy does. That's one of our tools.
Explain how that would work.
So what we'll do is I'll call for the vote. People will say aye, and then we'll make sure that Jeff is doing it specifically so that
Okay.
we can hear. That's what you're suggesting?
correct.
Are members okay with that? Okay, let's go ahead and do that. So our first item is presentations and awards. We have recognitions for a few outgoing board and committee members, and two of them are with us today. I'm going to turn this over to Steve, but Dan and Sean, why don't you come up around, because we're going to take your pictures and give you your award.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner Steve Hammes, Assistant Administrator. We have 11 people who are their terms ended or they termed out in 2023, representing 85 years of service to the citizens of Stearns County. And again, we appreciate all of our citizens who are on our committees. There are two that are present in the meeting today to receive awards from the board. One is Sean Gates, who served on the Park Commission for 9 years, and the other is Dan Oxner, who is on the HRA board for 10 years. So again, the awards are behind you. We have Janet in here to take pictures.
Picture with each of you. So, Sean, let's go ahead and do your picture first. I want to thank you with all of you, especially with the two of you here. A lot of night meetings, a lot of other meetings. It really makes a difference for our community. I'm glad you're going to continue serving parks in a slightly different way, but we'll keep working together. Do you mind if I hand it to you? Yeah, you two to have a picture that had you looking like ants, so thank you. Dan? HRA, we were just talking before the meeting about how important our HRA is, and 10 years of service is a lot, and really thank you. And having Neil, our executive director, and Nicole coming on, those were great things. So on behalf of our board, thank you for your service on our HRA. Thank you. And then I'll make sure you get copies of those. And you have a box if you would like to bring them home that way. Oh, yes. Just like Brandon, right?
All right.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you and the others again. Truly, our county functions best. It works best when we have great participation from our community members, and they really do make a huge difference. So thank you for that.
Madam Chair.
Yes?
Angie Berg, Environmental Services, not to rain on your parade, but I wanted to acknowledge Jacob Holk. He is here today, and he served on our Board of Adjustment for 9 years. And so I just wanted to
Do we
publicly.
have his award here?
He's in the back.
So why don't
And
you
so-
come on up? We got to figure out if your award's here, if they were
It
getting
is
to-
not here,
It is
but
not,
I just
let's go
wanted to
ahead and do a
publicly
picture if we can
acknowledge
get
him.
Janet back.
Jacob Holk.
Hey,
Just-
Thank you for saying you're
Yes.
not raining on parade. We'd rather celebrate.
I'd have been fine. No,
No,
you're good.
Good morning.
I think she's checking to make sure. Otherwise, one way or
Thanks for
another,
the email and stuff. So no worries. That's
we're
fine.
really glad you made the
We'll see how quick Amazon can get it.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
Well, the Board of Adjustment takes a lot of work. A lot of people don't have a clue about what you all do, but it really is fundamental to our work. All right? Oh, I'm glad that was really good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, anybody else, just in case. Okay, no, thank you. Thank you for making the time and effort to come in. Angie, thank you. You know, we work on a lot of challenging things, and it's just great to be able to celebrate and think about each person and the work they've done. So on behalf of all of us, thank you again. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. I didn't have anybody reach out to me, any members, to pull any items. Dr. Williams, did you have anybody?
No, the only item I wanted to mention was the revised legislative priorities. But again, it is incorporated into electronic agenda too.
Right.
And printed in front of you as well.
Great. Did any member have anything they wanted to talk about more?
Yes, I'd like to pull F6,
Okay.
the interim use permit for
Okay.
the solar garden.
Okay, F6, is there anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Then I'm looking for a motion with the exception of F6, and we will go to that. Dr. Williams, where would you like for us to do that, since we ironically unusually don't have any environmental services today?
We don't, so I think you could take it first.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right. Looking for a motion again for the remainder of the items.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
I'll second that.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Persky. All right. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Bertram.
Aye.
Great. All right. Angie, F6. I believe this is one of the ones that was unanimous, that came to us as a unanimous recommendation. Is that correct?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Angie Berg, Environmental Services. So, yes, this is an interim use permit for a solar garden, and Planning Commission did hold their public hearing January 25th. We had one member absent, but the remainder vote was unanimous. I was not at that meeting, but I did hear some questions that Commissioner Persky had. So if there's no questions, I'm assuming he has
I
questions.
think Commissioner
but-
Persky, you probably have some questions.
Absolutely. And I guess it relates to protocol especially, and that relates also the way we have been working with solar. In the past, the interim permits were always in the area 25 years, mostly 25 years, and that's what happened. And this was approved back in 2023, and it was approved for 25 years. The applicants came back and just said, well, they maybe had gotten a late start on it, and it would be to their financial benefit, perhaps to extend it for an additional 12 years. Well, I guess my point is that the initial permit was approved for 25 years or 26 years, and that has been the policy for those that were the interim year permits prior to that. No one else has come in and asked for an extension. We were also, when we were permitting these for that a period of time, this is a reasonable amount of time because we're somewhat uncertain moving forward with solar as far as what the future is for that property perhaps, and what is going to happen, especially with the panels and the activities on the property beyond that 25 years. So it was very appropriate for us to continue to approve them. Well, the request was to extend that to 12 more years to make it for 48 years, 38 years. My point being is that I don't see the need to do that. We don't do that with.
So I'm
Okay.
just really quickly,
Yep.
so your question from a protocol standpoint is, do we have the ability to do that? I mean, maybe.
Do we have the ability to do that?
Right.
I believe we have the ability to do that.
So if we
but-
have the ability, so the recommendation in front of us is to approve that. It sounded like you had a question though from Ms. Bergen that.
Can I summarize with a word?
Okay.
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the rationale was they had gotten a late start and it was a financial benefit to them to extend. But that I think could be made for any group.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't necessarily see the rationale why we should extend the interim interim permit because they have 26 years in front of them.
Commissioner Notch?
So Angie, what is the cutoff date?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, and other commissioners, so getting back to the protocol question, let's back up. So whenever the board doesn't concur with the Planning Commission, your policy has always been to schedule your own public
Right.
hearing.
Right, today
So-
we are either accepting the recommendation or we're setting a hearing.
Perfect.
And we
Just-
generally don't do that when it's a unanimous vote.
So
I
just
don't know
to,
if we ever have.
depending on how long you want to have the conversation, but this is actually the first project that has been permitted as an interim use. All of the other solar projects that have come to the county board were conditional use permits. If you remember, 3-4 years ago, the board changed the ordinance, and now the first 1 megawatt on any property is permitted, issued by staff, and the second is issued then through an interim use permit. So the other projects that you've seen, while the developers may have said it's going to be maybe 25, 30 years for the panels, there is no permit deadline on those at all. So the protocol says that, yes, the board could hold a public hearing and decide to change it if you want to give them more time or not give them more time. But just to correct the record, that this is the first one that you've seen.
So, Ms. Berg, can you at least help me understand then why they needed to come to any of us to change that if any of them are flexible in how long they could be out there? I mean, help me or help us understand that.
Sure, Madam Chair. So this is the ones before this one have all been flexible. They could be there for 100 years if they wanted to. The conditional use permit does not give them a deadline to take the panels away. This is the first one that has been in front of you asking for more time for the reasons that the applicant stated.
All right.
And I'm not here obviously on behalf of the developer, but what I am learning, or we are learning as a department, is that this community solar garden program with Excel has become more complicated. That's one factor. Second factor is the panels are taking anywhere between 15 and 18 months to even, once you order them, to get them. So these things are taking longer. Again, that's what we've been told.
And recognizing you weren't there, Ms. Berg, what can you tell us since the commission voted 6-0 for this? What concerns were raised? What did they say in response? Again, this is for the public.
Madam Chair, and I would let Commissioner Persky speak to the other members, but my understanding was Commissioner Persky was the primary person that had concern with the time frame. But I will let you correct that if that wasn't true.
Correct. No, I wasn't the only one that was confused about the timeframe. All the other
Was a
members.
bit concerned.
Okay,
Just help us
concerns.
understand.
The other members had understood it as well, that in the past, we had been approving these for the 25 years. And Commissioner Bertram, you sat on the planning commission when many of those had come
So
through.
I'll get to him in a
But-
minute.
But I just wanted, about the
Yeah.
25 years, and saying that the 25 years was not the standard. Commissioner Bertram, wasn't.
Wait, you got to go through me. You got to go through the
Okay.
chair. So if you've got a question, do that. But again, what we're here today is we're either approving what the commission came to us unanimously, and they must have come to a decision that they were okay with handling this the way others were, or we set on a public hearing. That's our decision, and absolutely, Commissioner Bertram, if you've got something that you want to say, it would be highly unusual, probably without precedent, if we don't accept something that was unanimous, because we accept unanimous. We tend to only hold public hearings when it's split, pretty split. And so I have to admit, when I saw the packet, I thought it was interesting that it was unanimous to go ahead and approve that. So again, we're forward-looking on all of this. It sounds like, and it's hard too, because, you know, when we serve on, when we're the liaisons, we actually aren't a member of the committee, but it sounds like you have some pretty strong feelings, or at least concerns or questions, or about what's different. But this sounds like it would also be an outlier compared to the rest that have been approved through the conditional use permit, if we were even to negate what they were able to do.
But my point is that they were all confused as well. They thought the policy was at 25 years.
But ultimately, they got to saying yes to extend it.
It was a voice vote. It wasn't a roll call vote.
But that was unanimous. Nobody called a roll call vote. And again, they weren't confused by the end, or they wouldn't have voted yes.
Might this be an item for a future agenda separately?
Just the topic, yes. But for today, it's either we're accepting the planning commission's recommendation or we're setting a hearing.
I'm not in favor of approving it today.
So are you going to make a motion to table it? What's your druthers?
So, what do you want to do?
Personally, I'd like to go ahead and just deny it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that, not with a 6-0
Well,
approval.
wait a minute.
What-
If it's denied, when could they bring it back up again?
We have to have a hearing then. If we don't accept the recommendation, just a moment, Joe, we need to set a public hearing. That's what we would do. So if
Okay.
you want to move for a public hearing, we could
So
certainly
moved.
do that. Okay, there's a motion for a public hearing. Is there a second?
I'll second that public hearing.
Okay, further discussions. Commissioner Notch and then Commissioner Bertram.
I'm just really curious why this is becoming such an issue. It seems like this is deeper than, if this met all the requirements and the planning commission approved it, which Commissioner Bertram has sat on, you've been the liaison, I'm not sure what, I mean, if it's a personal thing or not, if they meet their criteria, I'm not sure what the angst is against these solar. I mean, they're permitted use in the ag zone. I mean, we might not personally like some of the features of solar, but realistically, it's an allowed use. And we created an interim use permit for the 2nd megawatt, so I guess I don't understand.
I have to admit, I'm kind of with you. Commissioner Bertram, do you have something to add in on this?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I think we should do a public hearing. Several planning commission members have talked to me after the meeting. This is a little confusing for everyone, including myself, because we did some, as Angie said, with the CUP process. We did some with the IUP process. My memory isn't perfect, but I remember the last two that we did in 21 and 22. I believe we set 25 years for one of them and 26 years for the other one. So we have and Angie's right, we did CUPs and IUPs, so that's confusing, I can tell you, to members. They didn't fully understand that. And then why the request is still isn't clear. The first thing I was taught when I went on the planning commission is we don't base our decisions on business decisions or on financial reasons. And yet, really, the only reason, if they didn't plan that the Xcel Energy or these Minnesota, the Public Utilities Commission, or these things would be delayed or something, that's really not our issue. And there is a lot of concerns, and it's not just us. Obviously, I don't need to repeat the townships that have moratoriums and or outright do not allow solar. So there are a lot of concerns for a lot of different reasons. I think Stearns County has the most solar sites in the state. Approving these things quick and easy isn't, in my opinion, the way to go. And a lot of folks that I talk to, they want a deliberate process. The townships still want to be notified about this, which in this case, I did let Wakefield Township know that this request was before them, and their planning commission did have a lot of questions, and I can't remember, I think they did act on it with reservations or stated some questions. So they certainly, I think, feel that they want to have some input, so the public hearing would allow that. But there's a lot of moving parts here, and of course, one thing we've learned with solar, it's a domino effect. When one does it, we're going to have many others in line. And again, I can tell you, and again, if someone doesn't see this, I can't help that. But at the end of the day, I have not seen a solar application, and I've supported some, and I've opposed more than some. But I can tell you that the solar companies are not in Stearns County to benefit Stearns County and or individual property owner. There may be side effects that it benefits them, but it's a business and good for them. But they're here.
Jeff, we just got to keep it pretty narrowly. This is something that's already been approved. They're asking for an extension. It's not on the merits that we would either be approving or denying. It really is whether or not we would be doing an extension. So we don't have the time to do another debate about solar today. We will do that, it sounds like, at some point. But remember, this is something that yes, I agree with you. I think it's a little confusing. Commissioner Notch, and then I want to see if Angie has anything she wants to add, and then I'm going to suggest we go ahead and call a vote because I'm not sure we're going to change anybody's minds right this second. Commissioner Notch.
Well, my question relates to Madam Chair. So if the concern is the years, can we make the adjustment to the years at this meeting and approve it?
Ms. Berg.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, the only time I ever remember the board doing that in 25 years was once, and it was for a mining operation, and I think everyone felt kind of uncomfortable with that because we strayed from the protocol of holding a public hearing if you want to change anything related to it.
So it sounds like the request is for extending the number of years. They already have it. It sounds like for another 23 years, they could choose not to actually decide to have a public hearing and come back in 5, 10, 15 years if they wanted to. Although I'm sure that they're just trying to get whatever the current practice is. We are not making a decision about whether they can have them. We're not doing anything like that. So either we're having a public hearing on whether we're extending it, which it sounds like 3 members are in favor of, or we're approving the unanimous recommendation of the Planning Commission. Those are our 2 choices. Commissioner Lensman.
I don't want to approve or deny. I want to discuss why is this different.
Okay. So it sounds like we'll be setting on a public hearing. We're going to have to take a vote on that. I mean, those are our 2 choices.
Madam Chair, there's a motion on the floor.
I know, I was going to make sure we get there if there's any other communication about this. Otherwise, I want to know when we could do this before we take the vote. Yes, Ms. Berg.
Madam Chair, Dr. Williams, I think when I'm standing here thinking through this, I think it would be best if you had the general discussion about this before you have the public hearing. Okay. Otherwise, the public hearing is going to be all about the past and the future. I would rather come to you whenever it's appropriate and explain what's been done, how the permits have been different over the years, and then have the public hearing sometime after that, That would be my suggestion, but
So
that's up to the board.
Just give me a minute, Joe. So there isn't, like we often have, a certain number of days that we need to get through this, because we have a number of other things that are going to be coming up in the next, might not be for a month, based on what we have in the next meeting.
Madam Chair, that was going to be my question for.
That's what I was wanting to know.
Are we up against a time limit here, or could it be the second meeting in March, for example?
Madam Chair, yes, we are up against, and we were always up against 120 days, but we can extend that. And I'll look at the calendar and make sure that we can first have a discussion, maybe at the first meeting in March. I know you want to keep your February 20th agenda light.
No, because we have a work session, that's why. So
Or
we're
not
not trying to
have-
keep it light, where we've got a longer meeting that's
Right,
attached.
so
to it.
we wouldn't put it on that meeting, is what I'm trying to say. We would put it on the first meeting in March, and then we could have the public hearing probably that second meeting in March, is what I'm thinking, without looking at dates in front of me.
So you're saying we have a third option in this particular case, that we could, instead of setting it on for a public hearing right now, we could move to set it on for a public hearing, but not set the date and have the conversation about this first? Or are you recommending that we have the conversation first and then we make it, which seems like either the mover needs to modify their motion or somebody would be pulling this agenda item?
Madam Chair, I think that could be a third option. I didn't mean to complicate it. I think you also could move today to schedule a public hearing.
Okay.
And we could still have that.
But it would be after
before
that date.
Right, and Heidi just messaged me, we have until April 18th
Okay.
to make a final decision.
Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, I like Angie's idea for a couple of reasons, to have the larger discussion. We've been talking about solar for a year. There seems to have been some interest in changing the way we're doing it to notify townships and other changes to the solar. So we could and should have the larger discussion. And I like her idea of doing that first before we act on this item.
Yeah, I agree with you. Are you okay with that, Commissioner? It sounds like what you really wanted to do, Commissioner Lenzmeyer, is have a conversation.
Yep.
So do you want to modify your
What would you
motion?
suggest? What
March
would be an
19th.
appropriate?
So we would have
Or Angie,
it would
either
be
way.
moving to have the public hearing on March 19th, but we would meet before to have the broader discussion, whether in a regular meeting or a work session. So I don't think we have to modify that. We just would be setting this on for March 19th for the public hearing.
Yeah.
Commissioner Persky and
Yeah.
then Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I don't think we have to modify the motion.
No, we don't. We
No.
just will set it on for the 19th. Commissioner Notch?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Angie, this was a bring back from a previous, this expired once before. Is this the one? Or is that a different one that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, this one has not expired.
Okay. So my question, not to belittle this or drag this on, but it says parties notified were Wakefield Township, City of Cold Springs, City of Rockville, Sauk River Watershed. So I assume these were all notified prior to the public hearing?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Notch, correct.
So I'm a little confused that you get a 6-0 vote, and after the fact, with all the solar we've had, now all of a sudden, after the vote, members are confused. I'm not really sure. I'm just speaking for myself. It just seems ironic. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like we're moving to a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side.
Aye.
Aye.
Wait a minute.
Commissioner Bertram, can you go ahead and vote now? This is about setting
Yes,
the
I
public
vote.
hearing on.
Yes, I vote aye for setting the public hearing for March 19th.
Okay, so we'll need to do a roll call because we have a split vote.
Madam Chair,
I-
can I ask a question? Commissioner Lenzmeyer?
Actually, we'll let Randy rephrase what we're voting on,
Okay,
so
yeah,
we
could
make
you-
sure.
Yeah.
Again, you can't just keep going back until you get the answer you like.
Well, no, but I think there's some confusion.
There might be, but,
I'm sure we did.
okay,
Yeah.
So the motion is to set the public hearing for March 19th.
yes, thank you.
Okay, and Commissioner Bertram stated that correctly. So Commissioner Persky, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Lenzmeyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Notch,
Nay.
Commissioner Clark.
Nay,
It passes 3-2.
but, right. Don't you have to ask Jeff to do it again, or did that count? Because he already did.
Jeff, how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay, so we'll set this on for a public hearing, and Dr. Williams, you'll help us figure out when we can have this conversation, and maybe we could also have a refresher on what our procedures and policies are for what gets brought to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the Human Services Board consent items. Ms. Huberty and others.
When we first arrived at St. Jude, it was just Claire and I.
Oops, Lee, I think you're,
Brain surgery, and
Lee, I think you need to turn off your sound on your computer.
This will take a while.
and how to speak.
Just on the keyboard.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, well, I'll shut it down.
No, we should get somebody from IT to come help. That's unfortunate because it's still going. I think we need somebody from IT because it won't.
All right.
But she was really missing her siblings.
Okay, Ms. Huberty.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Melissa Huberty, I'm the Human Services Administrator, and today there are 4 items on the Human Services consent agenda. The first one is item G1 on page 165 and is a request to approve our 2024-2025 Comprehensive Corrections Act comprehensive plan. This plan is required for Stearns County to receive our corrections funding. As you know, we have a very active and robust board, and we just want to really thank Commissioners Notch and Commissioner Clark for being on that board. And they are a very active and healthy and wonderful board that has helped to inform this plan. Upon approval by Stearns County Board, the final document will be submitted to the Department of Corrections and the final review and approval for their approval and review, and then thereafter it would be put on the public website. The second item is item G2 on page 167 and is to approve a grant agreement with the Department of Health for our public health response sustainability services. This funding supports our work with emergency management so that we can respond to emergencies and other emergent situations that occur, including disease outbreaks, and we do training and community education and prevention work with that grant. The third item is item G3 on page 171, and we request that you appoint Eunice Agi to be our chair of the Human Services Advisory Committee. And then item G4 on page 172 is claims paid on behalf of Human Services clients, and I'm available for questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yep.
Or looking for a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch.
I can second that.
Great. Second by Commissioner Lensmeyer.
I got it figured out.
Any further questions or? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the Human Services Board consent items signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign? All right. They are,
Just make sure.
oh
Commissioner
yes, I'm
Bertram,
sorry, Commissioner Bertram, can you?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Great, now we're going to move on to the presentation regarding St. David's. I'm excited to be hearing this. Thank you for being here.
Yes, on the Human Services regular board agenda item, it's item H1 on page 174, and it's to receive information from St. David's Center about their services and request approval from the Stearns County Board to become the government sponsor for them to seek and secure bond funding. And I have with me today Julie Shortall, who's the CEO of St. David's Center, along with Maureen Walsh, who's the Chief Advancement and Strategy Officer, to provide information about their services, discuss their two-phased approach to open a child care center in Stearns County, as well as to construct an education and early intervention center should we be successful and they be successful in securing bond funding. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Shortall.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to tell you about St. David's Center and make a request. Today, I welcome the opportunity to provide you with an overview of St. David's Center and our services, our approach, and the impact of our work, as well as share with you our two-phased plan to expand access to services that St. David's Center can provide in early intervention in Stearns County. And finally, request that Stearns County become our government sponsor for St. David's Center as we seek and secure bond funding to build and equip a site in Stearns County. So starting with an introduction to St. David's Center. St. David's Center is a 60-year-old organization that started, as many good ideas do, with the will from a community to use one of its assets to build an early education center. So our name comes from our early start in St. David's Episcopal Church, but very quickly in our history, we became our own 501c3. We're a non-faith-based nonprofit. Out of that early start and that community will to serve the community with their asset has grown, has emerged a large children and family service organization that today serves over 4,500 children and families. And our service areas include early childhood education, early intervention and treatment, community-based disability services, and parent and professional training and consultation with a mission to build relationships that nurture the development of every child and family. I want to provide you with a little bit more of an overview of what early intervention and treatment looks like in the scope of our services. Of our 4,500 children and families served, 3,600 receive an early intervention or treatment service from St. David's Center. And it's represented on this continuum. This is a visual that shows the intensity and severity of symptoms and the response that meets families' needs as a result of what's going on for children and families. Starting with parent coaching and support. Sometimes parents just need a little counsel as their children are struggling, and our staff can reach out and just provide early coaching and support along the way. And secondly, on this continuum is infant and early childhood home visiting. So those parents who are struggling as a result of their own histories or experiences, trauma or adversity in the family, there are services where our staff go out and provide parent and child coaching and support in home visiting, long-term home visiting, to really help parents as they're working through the early development of their children during those critical years. And then moving on to pediatric therapies and mental health therapies. And these are the result of children who have had significant issues in their lives and as a result have a diagnosable mental health or developmental need. And so it can either come as a result of trauma or as a result of significant trauma or as a result of developmental needs. And our staff intervene with an outpatient pediatric therapy. On to more intensive mental health services, and at the very far end of the continuum is intensive day treatment. So there's a number of children in the community that are their issues and needs are so complex that they are not successful in typical childcare settings, their interventions needed are intensive 5 day a week, and with the goal of really good outcomes and helping them be ready to enter into kindergarten successfully. Moving on with just a few data points that helps you see the work come to life in a different way. 43 were just under calculated that number. 4,500 kids, children, parents, and individuals with special needs are receiving services. We have 525 staff members from paraprofessional to those with master's and doctorate level. Our therapies are provided on an individual, family, and group service model in the metro community at 2 clinic locations, 30 different partner sites. Many of our staff go out and work inside of other schools and childcare centers to help those kids who are struggling in their settings, and then in hundreds of family homes across the metro community. We have a braided funding model. Certainly Medicaid is part of our funding, over 50%. State, county, and city grants, many of those state grants, contracts, commercial insurance, private pay, and charitable contributions. So our funding model is tested and has been that mix for many, many years. This next couple of slides is just to help it come to life in terms of our locations in the metro community. Our Minnetonka campus is our main campus where we started many years ago, and we have about 60,000 square feet on property, an old Hopkins School building that we renovated to become a state-of-the-art early education and intervention center. And by the way, with both philanthropy and bond funding helped with this campus as well. Provided on this site are early education, children's mental health services, autism treatment, both preschool and school age, and pediatric therapies. And our Minneapolis campus is embedded in Westminster Presbyterian Church, downtown Minneapolis. We were able to rent space fairly cheaply from them out of their mission to have space for a nonprofit on their site. And we provide children's mental health and an East African responsive autism day treatment and family support and pediatric therapies. And what I want to note on this, just this, is our commitment to partner with communities. The East African Autism Day Treatment Program really came out of the concern in the metro community around the number of children in the Somali community who have diagnosed with autism and show up for school without any interventions. So with a grant and from Medica Foundation, we were able to start a response of Autism Day Treatment Program, and we have a long wait list, earned credibility in their community as a result of our commitment to be culturally informed and partner with them. A couple other slides just to bring to life the work services. Our services in-home and at partner locations across the metro include children's mental health case management, community mental health services. We're at 19 child care centers and elementary schools. So our mental health staff co-locate in those sites and really help those children who might otherwise be discharged or demitted as a result of their behavioral health needs. And then parent-child home visiting in Hennepin and Scott County, and community-based disability services, both in-home and some group therapeutic recreation in schools and churches in the community. Now my colleague will take you through a few more slides.
Welcome. Madam Chair and Commissioners, I'm Maureen Walsh, Chief Advancement and Strategy Officer, just bringing your attention to some of the data that is underneath our concern as a nonprofit and a concern of a number of providers in the community across the state. Julie shared an overview of St. David's Center, but before we share our plan and make our request of you, it seems important to articulate these key data points. So the first is a statistic about early childhood trauma. By age 4, 1 in 4 children has witnessed or experienced trauma. As county leaders, you're very aware of the impact of early adversity, that impact that it can have on the developing brain and body. When we take a look at that statistic for kids in poverty, it doubles to 1 in 2. We know that flowing from there, we know that the challenging preschool behavior that can stem from early childhood trauma that's been documented across the community, that comes oftentimes from relational rupture in particular, results in preschool or can result in preschool expulsion. So children that are 3 and 4 years old being demitted from childcare, as Julie mentioned a minute ago. This data comes from the Yale University study that was published long ago, but after 20 years, Walter Gillum, who's the principal researcher from Yale, has said that there's no evidence across the nation that trend has improved. Similarly, we know that the Centers for Disease Control monitors a number of metrics tied to children's mental health and has stood by the same study finding since 2012 that 1 in 5 children has a diagnosable mental health issue, yet only 20% get access to the services that they need. The next couple data points relate to autism and other developmental disabilities. 1 in 6 children has a developmental delay or disability, and 1 in 34 Minnesota children is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. What we find equally concerning to that prevalence data is that too many kids are entering kindergarten with documented developmental concerns through pediatric visits, through potentially through other providers, and yet only 1 in 3 were evaluated by age 3, which we know opens the door to early intervention when the brain is most malleable. So without, it would be ridiculous to not state that the pandemic has had an even bigger impact on young children. And it's been very difficult for their families as well. So we know from multiple studies and more anecdotes, certainly that we hear and certainly that would be circulating in the community here in Stearns County, that it has eroded, the pandemic has eroded the childcare industry. Our own post-pandemic observations as a provider of the services that Julie mentioned, we are seeing needs that were documented well before the pandemic, but there's no question that it's taken its toll on the David Center. In our early childhood education program, we've seen a 35% increase in mental health referrals. We're seeing increased distress in kids from peer relationships to their own impulsivity and inability to remain in a regulated state, to attend to the teacher cues, to sit in circle time, all of those behaviors that come with normal development of young children have been interrupted and in a lot of cases compromised. In parents, there's also significant distress, struggling with children at home and in other settings. These challenges have resulted in something we've never seen to this extent before, and that's parents that are asking for as much help as they can get, even without a formal diagnosis for their children. just, to state the obvious and forgive the obviousness of it, we're trying to walk into communities in greater Minnesota and potentially expand our reach in the Twin Cities as well, just coming alongside these needs with as much expertise and capacity as we can, because if we don't address these needs as early as possible, we know that many kids will show up in kindergarten without the support that's needed to be successful. That early identification of needs is linked to having those supports in place, or to getting the intervention before kids hit kindergarten that could actually have them in mainstream without supports. Schools and parents will bear the weight of that for the short and immediate intermediate term, of course, and parents for the long term. And society bears this incredibly large cost long term if we don't do anything. Children will be on an outcome trajectory that could have been prevented. So our main point is, as a partner potentially for Stearns County, we would hope to take the pressure off of services down the road that would be downstream of our early identification and intervention with those needs. So passing it back to Julie to talk a little bit about our vision and our request.
Thank you, Commissioner, or Madam Chair and Commissioners. Our vision is to grow into Stearns County in partnership with this community. We have been honored to be invited by the United Way of Central Minnesota into multiple conversations and have been so deeply impressed by the resolve in the community to come to the table. United Way, government leaders, business leaders, providers of services. We've met with many groups in the last several months. And our goal has been to co-create solutions to the child care crisis in the region and address the mental health and developmental needs of children and families. Out of those conversations, we've been invited to consider growing into the community, and a vision has emerged with a two-phase approach. Phase one is to open a child care center for 150 children in partnership with CentraCare. Planning is underway, a CentraCare building has been selected, and we are anticipating a launch of early 2025. This requires no additional funding. Phase two is to open a 40,000 to 50,000 square foot early education and intervention center, serving approximately 1,500 children annually, ensuring that children have access to critically needed pediatric therapies, mental health, and high-quality inclusive early childhood education services during such foundational years of their development. The bigger vision will require bond funding and philanthropic support. With that support, we will be able to launch the build in 26 to 2027. So St. David's Center comes to this with strong competencies and deep experience in bond funding and fundraising. We renovated and expanded and upgraded the grounds of our building in the Twin Cities in partnership with our community, including Hennepin County as the government sponsor for that bond request. We understand that bond funding obligations mean managing compliance and take on that responsibility on our end. It requires requirements are tied to bond funding and ongoing relationship with the government sponsor that supports the request. We have strong experience as a fundraising organization, bringing community partners to the table, building, deepening, and retaining philanthropic relationships. And so with that in mind, our request today is that Stearns County helps make this possible by becoming the government sponsor as we seek state bond funding.
All right, and with that, if approved by the board, we anticipate that this would have a significant positive effect on our services, certainly in human services, but across the partnerships that we have in this community. And so the request is, as she said, to get approval from the board to become the government sponsor for St. David's to seek and secure bond funding. And with that, we are open for questions.
So before we get going on that, just want to thank you again for being here and for the work you do. I've been familiar for a long time, and I know Representative Bernie Perryman might be listening right now. She's very excited about the possibilities of this. So to clarify, this is under this would be sought under the area and bonding bills that are for early childhood facilities that are scored higher when there's multi-partners and multi-services. I know it says GO bonds. I'm guessing that if there's cash available, that would also be, I mean, for us, it's all the same regardless what we do, but you wouldn't say no to cash if that's the way they decide to do it. Okay. In a way, this is rather like the Southside Boys and Girls Club was done, where the city of St. Cloud held the land and the Boys and Girls Club moved forward on it. Questions, members? Comments?
Just to
Yes.
be clear, I believe that means it's all state bonding, right? There's
Yes,
no county
yes,
bond,
this is
right?
state funding,
Yep.
bond or general funds. Thank you for that clarification, and that money only goes so far, but it's an important part, at least with other projects around here. These are, I worked on these before and during the legislature, so really appreciate with that. Dr. Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and members. I think a similar project would be the mental health center that we did, a few years back too, where we've got a long-term lease there. It was funded with state dollars, but technically owned by the county. So I think that's if you want to think about how this would work, that's how it would work. If the board approves this too, I would suggest that we add it to our legislative priorities too. So if you want to take that step after this, then that would allow us to allow all of us to support it down in the legislature too,
Makes
if the board goes that way.
Questions, comments, a motion? Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Commissioner
just a couple of questions. So in the future, would this require any county funding on an annual basis?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no.
Essentially, they would be leasing from, yes, I mean, that's a really good question. It's important for the public to know. And I think you said you had a second question.
And the follow-up, could this, in essence, kind of be a long-term benefit to the county because it might, right now, we have a strain on finding enough staff and resources where this could be a plus on the county side to alleviate some of that.
Absolutely. I anticipate that this would have a significant positive effect both on our prevention side of services as well as our juvenile community action team and our deep end high acuity youth. It would help across the continuum in all those areas.
Commissioner Persky.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, were you done?
Yep.
I know Joe's chomping at the bit, so.
Just, the bit's kind of wet, yeah. I agreed with Steve in that I think the public needs to know that we're going to be carrying this, but we're not going to have the financial obligation of this. That's very important to understand. And then also the importance of early childhood intervention. I can't overstress how important that is in doing that. So, also, as far as cooperation, then also with the school districts, will you be working in sync with the school districts because they have also early childhood programs and day one through preschool as well, opportunities. So we very much would welcome that cooperation and doing the best we can for these kids. So yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. We certainly work with school districts in the metro community. That is, we recognize that we are in partnership with getting kids ready, and we are in partnership when they're in the schools. So our commitment is for deep end partnership with the school districts.
Thank you. Commissioner Bertram, I cannot see you right now. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I have several, so I know you don't like to allow more than a couple of questions at a time, but I can
go for it.
Pause some of them. But on the summary and background on the request for action sheet in bullet 2, it says item 2, culturally responsive. Help me understand what culturally responsive is.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the culturally responsive is our goal in that program is to have staff that represent the community and to be thoughtful, have learned from their representation on our team. So our East African culturally responsive autism program, about half of that staff is our Somali professionals and paraprofessionals. And we are in the process, as part of our work with them, in a process of learning from them and them learning from the staff with the autism expertise. So it's just a commitment to being curious and learning together. And as a result, we've gained a reputation in the Somali community about our responsiveness. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, Madam Chair, and of course the
Commissioner
concern would be, Madam Chair, my concern would be that obviously Stearns County is very diverse. It's a huge county, and we'd want to make sure in all the information that we received, it says a lot about St. Cloud metro area. You know, the St. Cloud, there's daycare crises across the county, especially more in the rural areas. It's even worse because for a lot of reasons. But you know, we'd want to be sure that we're looking at all ethnic groups and the entire county, not just part of it, I guess, would be my concern. Mike said, Madam Chair, that the mental health center, I was going to ask if there's other examples of this, if there's anything else, even if we don't have it now, I'd like to have that information, Mike, what else we might be involved in. And then I'm curious, Madam Chair,
Yes,
Melissa, why isn't the city of St. Cloud being the fiscal agent?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, our intent, you know, our experience with our other building was to work with the county government, and given the partnership of county services with the kind of work St. David Center does, it seems to be such a natural place to engage in that and to go and to lean into that partnership. So that we certainly could have gone to the city, and the city's with the city's bond funding requests, it seemed like it'd be wise to both inform the county team and just enter into a natural partnership in other ways as we enter the community. So for all those reasons, it seemed to make the most sense on our end, and in our first conversations with the county team, county leadership team, it made sense to them as well.
It's a very, very good question. I have Ms. Huber to go. I've got a couple questions with that for you to incorporate. Unlike some of the things the city has done, this is a broader family-related services, which does seem like it dovetails because the city does not provide any services at all that relates, and that while it might be in St. Cloud, the kind of center it is, it will have a much broader reach than just the city, people living in the city of St. Cloud. And please correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, that is correct, Madam Chair, Commissioners, that is correct. And I would add just to the general discussion that the partnership and being involved and at the table and ensuring that this community is heard, it dovetails very nicely with county services. And that means the stronger that partnership is, the more likely we are to benefit from that.
Yeah, so my understanding, just to check, and Commissioner Persky just was asking sideways, is like the mental health center, it'll be more of a regional. So you'll be working with people who are also in Sherburne or Benton counties outside of the city limits as well as within. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I would also add that we're quite familiar with working with medical transportation. Many of the clients that we serve at our other locations, their services are funded through insurance or Medicaid, so we are able to access Medivans, Medicabs to get the children on site. So, and we help families coordinate that. It's a lot to coordinate, so we help families coordinate that and could do that for families in the rural area as well. And
Commissioner Bertram, do you have additional questions, or these are great questions?
Couple of them, Madam Chair. You know, several times in the memo and what was said this morning, getting back to the culturally diverse question, a lot of statistics were used: 1 in 5 children, 1 in 6 children, 1 in 34 children. Again, is that across the board, or is that to a specific population, or are those ratios and examples that were used, is that across the board for all populations?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, those first stats, unless it says Minnesota, those are all national statistics that would cross racial groups.
Got it. And Madam Chair,
Commissioner Bertram, real quick, those are the kind of data that's come to the legislature too, certainly over the last 10, 15 years, about seeing those kinds of numbers. Okay, next question.
And it might be helpful, Madam Chair, if we can get that, even, you know, especially if we move forward with this. I mean, the more information we can all get, the better we can educate,
absolutely,
the public if they have concerns. A lot of talk is about there's no expense, there's no county obligation. Randy asked a good question. Make sure in the bonding. Obviously, it's taking staff time, and this is not a negative, but a reality is there is staff time involved. There is the bonding is going to go through. The sublease is going to happen. So, I mean, we went through something like this with the Career Solutions last meeting, and we held off on approving the contract that we were talking about for the very specific reason raised by other members about how are we liable or how are we not liable if it doesn't work out or if things don't go the way it's planned. And again, I don't expect anybody to answer that today, but I would like to have a response to that in writing, that if it doesn't work out, and of course we can use other examples of things that didn't work out. And then of course, it's always good to be proactive than not reactive. So I'd like to have a little bit of that background.
Great.
And then
both Ms. Huberty and Dr. Williams have information back for you on that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I was going to add that this is the two-phase process. Phase 1 is the Child Care Center. That's happening anyway. Phase 2 is the part where, if the board approves today, they would go to the legislature, seek, I think, up to $400,000 all along the way, if that's approved. So this will be kind of a long process, and there'll be plenty of time to come back. The plan would be to keep coming back, do a lot of community engagement, keep coming back to the board to inform you of how it's coming along as we move along. Because it's going to take until the next legislative cycle after this year, if I'm understanding it correctly, to even go for the bigger bond funding.
Right.
So
And
there'll
they
be
may
plenty
not
of
get a
time to
bond-
come back
they
and
might
update.
not get a bonding bill this year, which
Correct,
we
yeah.
guess then the planning gets put off. I wanted to actually throw that into the mix. So it sounds very similar to what we went through with the process of the mental health center.
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
Dr. Williams.
Madam Chair, thank you. That was really my point. This is to get moving on
Yes.
this year. There will certainly be more formal actions that the board will have to take as we move along here. And you'll see those kinds of things, what are exactly our responsibilities and risks as we move along here.
Okay. Commissioner Persky, did you?
I don't, if there's no other questions, I think we should go ahead and move this forward. And
that a
again,
motion?
there'll be, Commissioner Linsmeyer has a question. But Dr. Williams, you're saying that there'll be further progress in the future, and we'll have some stopgaps perhaps if we need to have stopgaps in the future.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Lensmeyer, and then I'm not sure if Commissioner Bertram has anything, and I wasn't sure if that was a motion, but we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Yeah, all of these proposals, the cost of all these proposals can be divided into two categories typically, and that's staff and stuff. And real estate is included in that, operating, any specific dedicated operating equipment and all of that. We're pretty good at estimating stuff costs. But boy, staff just seems to be much harder to have a handle on. Is it? I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish. Is there a way to get a grip on that, on those aspects of what you're trying to do?
Is he ready?
I didn't know if you were going to respond. I had something.
Yep,
else to-
go ahead. Any of you could go ahead and respond.
Yeah, anybody could answer it.
Madam Chair, Commissioner-
If you can't, that's fine too.
Madam
you'll
Chair,
get back to
Commissioner
us.
Lensmeyer, thank you for that comment. Yes, staff time is always a part of this.
Yeah.
We are willing to do it within the Human Services Department because I know that when we put staff time on this type of project, we're going to pay a lot less and there's going to be a lot less trauma later. And that's why I'm seeing out-of-home placement. When we do prevention, we're seeing out-of-home placement dollars going down. And that's what I'm seeing in my department because we are already doing quite a bit of prevention. This adds to that side of the equation as well as helping us with the high acuity side. Those are all very expensive services. So
Oh,
for
yeah.
us, it would be super smart to business-wise as well as trauma-wise, reducing trauma in the community, to put our effort and our staff time there. It excites us to do that because we know it works. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's where my mind is, that it pays dividends times 1,000 later.
It also sounds like it's leveraging or expanding who will be working with families in this
Yes.
area,
Yes.
which really helps maybe add some extra bandwidth as opposed to
Oh, yes.
what staff are trying to do on their own.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I just want to echo the intervention, early childhood, prior to kids coming to school, those that have the enriched environment, those that have had help, okay, are far ahead of those that have not had those things. When we see kids coming into the school district with special needs that haven't had the intervention, whether it be physical or mental developmental needs, that enhanced time at the early stages is so important, cognitively, language-wise, physically. So absolutely, there's a huge benefit to having these programs at the early ages, absolutely.
One question I had was, have you had initial conversations with area legislators to be carrying this? I'm guessing yes, given again Representative Perryman's comments, but could you talk to us about that? Because we would be engaged, but you would be taking the lead in that.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we certainly have. With Representative Perryman, Putnam, and Wobegon. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so all three have expressed tremendous support for this request and have advised us to engage in the pre-design process this year as a way to, bring the community along and learn and prepare for a bigger bond funding ask. So all three have recommended that we go forward.
Commissioner Bertram, anything else?
Madam Chair, I certainly have reservations, largely because of Representative Perryman supporting it and also Director Hubert stating the strong point. Well, it's a nice diverse group. And I think, remember, we've got 400 employees that are Health and Human Services out of our 900. My concerns, and I will raise them privately with Mike and with Melissa, but let's focus on the people that we need to reach and staff time that we need to take care of, a lot of other programs that we're doing. In the January 7th memo that Mike sent out, he said there is not a request from the county on this project, and it kind of seems to evolve. Commissioner Persky asked if, as we go down, I just don't want to automatically say, okay, we're going to go forward with this. And then if we see some issues or whatever, that we can't slow it down or stop it or better tailor it. So at this point, I certainly will support that. The only other information I'd like someone to provide is nonprofits are great, but I'd like to see the financials of the nonprofit because as we all know, nonprofits sometimes can be a little bit of a misleading term. But and again, we've got time for all this. But for today's action, let's do what we need to do. But I will be asking for additional information.
Understandable. Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I did yesterday go on your website and looked at your 2021 annual report that you have published on there. And because I guess part of my questions were the funding and where everything was at. So that was nice that you guys actually have that online to view. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Notch. I did the same thing. And once upon a time, I served on the Sheltering Arms Foundation board. And so well aware of kind of your progress over time and the result. I mean, we haven't really even talked about results or performance measurements, but they're very impressive. Commissioner Lensmeyer and then Commissioner Persky.
Maybe it's not a fair way for me to consider it this way, but over time, what has happened is a blurring of the lines and responsibilities between education and human services. This continues that process, but I don't have an answer on a better way to handle this. So at this juncture, all we can do is just hope for positive outcomes. But much beyond that, I don't have anything to add to the process.
Okay.
I think we maybe exhausted the topic. So with that, I'll go ahead. I'll move the project forward with the motion.
Great. We have a motion to authorize Stearns County to serve as St. David's government sponsor to seek and secure bond funding. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? Agreeing that probably that the horse is dead. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Jeff, do you want to vote?
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Do you need us to do something different, Randy?
I just want to hear from Lee. How are you voting?
Oh, aye.
Great. Yes, it gets to be a
I
little
was into
tricky
the next
sometimes. Okay, opposed, same sign. All right, this is
Thank you.
approved. Thank you. It's going to be really interesting to see how.
Madam Chair. I was going to ask something at issues by Commissioner, just a quick note, and that is we've had some concerns about the homeless, and I appreciate all the work Stearns County is doing. We've got a lot of activities going on. However, that task force, was proposed in October, and they're still having trouble getting going. I just want to make sure that, we're meeting the needs of the community, and by all means, the county support there is greatly appreciated. I'm headed with that, but
And while that's not on the agenda, it is something I will continue to say. Stearns County has worked in partnership for decades on this. So the city wanting to do something is maybe inconsequential to our work, but if you've got anything that you want to add.
Yeah,
do.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I did send a listing of just some of the current projects that we're working on, and I'll send that out to the broader board members. I just know that Commissioner Persky and I had briefly discussed this last week. So we are definitely in support of the partnership. We are absolutely going to be at the table with the city and the other counties, and we will continue down that path. We have full support for that, so thank you.
And keep encouraging the city of St. Cloud, that has 3 counties in it, to take their responsibility seriously about emergency housing while we continue to work on our broader prevention and longer-term sustainability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your support.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you both for making the trek here. We really appreciate it. Wonderful. Yes, Dr. Williams.
I'm sorry, I was waving goodbye to our guests.
Well, then I'm going to go to Ms. Tyke, and then we're going to take our break.
It's like at an auction, I would have bought something.
Yeah, I was going to say, you almost bought something. I'm going to take that as a side of buying. Ms. Tyke.
Good morning. My item, I-1, begins on page 176 of your agenda packets. And today I will be asking the board to approve a contract amendment for design services for our County Road 157 reconstruction project. And that is between the cities of Freeport and Albany. So back in August, the board did approve hiring Apex Engineering to perform the design on the reconstruction project along County Road 157. That contract amount was just over $247,000. So when we sent out the request for proposals, we said that the trestle bridge, the railroad trestle bridge that goes over County Road 157, just west of Albany, would be staying in place because we believed there wasn't a chance we would be able to take that bridge down and truly improve a short section of County Road 157 along that stretch. Since then, we have gotten permission from the Regional Rail Authority to remove that trestle bridge as part of our reconstruction project. So with that bridge staying in place, our drainage and roadway design options were very limited, and basically we were going to design a water retention area just upstream of that area to try and minimize the number of times that County Road 157 would flood on a regular basis. Again, once we got that permission from the Regional Rail Authority to remove the wooden portion of that bridge, which is now part of the ultimate Dairyland Trail, I would say, but the bridge was in a condition that the Regional Rail Authority determined it would be in the best interest of everyone to take it down, particularly related to roadway safety and improvements. So in addition to a few other minor items, obviously we have to have a plan put together for that bridge removal because it connects to a bridge over the freeway. We did take a very brief look at it initially just to make sure we could take that down in sections as opposed to the entire bridge, including the portion across Interstate 94. So we need plans drawn up to do that. And now our drainage design is a little bit more extensive because we can look at several options. Along the way, we've also asked the consultant to do a couple of other things, look at potential realignment of an intersection along the road. We're extending curb and gutter further than initially thought within the city of Albany. And we've had a couple of different options with sidewalk that the city has asked us to look at. So the contractor did come back, or the consultant, excuse me, did come back to us with a contract amendment of $48,765.34. Since I have submitted my board agenda items, I've gotten them down to $44,045.03. We do think that's a conservative estimate, and we do plan to be watching these hours very closely for the additional work. But I do think the benefit of this is that additional work that will take place where the trestle bridge currently goes over County Road 157, and we think we're going to have a better long-term solution in the area. So I'm asking the board to approve that contract amendment, and I can answer any questions anyone has.
Questions? Commissioner Notch?
I'll move the requested action, Madam Chair.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I can second that. It's easier to understand stuff than it is people.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Bertram, do you have anything? Okay. See no further discussion or no discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Commissioner Bertram, can you unmute so you can vote?
You're still muted, Jeff.
Yeah, you're still muted. I see a
He's giving
thumbs up.
Thumbs up,
And
okay.
his
Oh,
saying,
great.
yeah, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
muted.
is that good enough, Randy?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, excellent. Opposed, same sign. All right, it's approved. Thank you.
A couple of very quick miscellaneous
miscellaneous?
items I wanted to mention. I did send an email out, and I've heard back from a couple of you, but by the end of the week, I'd like to look at registering for the Minnesota Transportation Alliance Transportation Day at the Capitol. That will be held on March 13th. It's a Wednesday this year. Generally, the program runs from 9 to about 3 with legislative visits in between. So if anybody is interested in going and you haven't let me know, please do so, and then I can coordinate the registrations, and we'll talk about transportation as that gets closer. You will also be getting a notice for a public open house related to a partnership between MnDOT and Stearns County for the intersection of Trunk Highway 4 and County Road 32, just north of the city of Lake Henry. We've had a significant number of crashes at that intersection, so we are going to hold that public open house. The project won't be done until 2026, but we get a lot of questions on it, so we figured we would start getting the public informed. That'll be held on Thursday, February 29th from 5 to 7 at the Lake Henry Fire Hall.
So, Ms. Tyke, I had the opportunity, I say that euphemistically, to drive on 322nd this past weekend again. It's been a little while. I continue to hear from folks. I'm not sure where we're at. I know Joe keeps trying to make sure that people are hearing about this at the APO, but it is interesting how much of it is the city and some of the danger that's related to it. Is there any update at all on that?
The St. Cloud APO is going through the process of updating its functional classification of the entire roadway system. And in looking at the functional classification of 322nd, if it fits within a higher functional class, that would open up doors for different revenue streams, for lack of a better term. I know that even though, yes, a significant portion is under the jurisdiction of the city of St. Cloud, there are 2 townships that also have jurisdiction, and that always makes a project a little bit more difficult to pull together, especially when 2 of those townships are also scraping up money for the local share on the Town Line Road project that they're pursuing right now. So I'm sure that certainly plays into it as well. I can't speak for those townships, but I am making that assumption. I think we can continue to raise the issue at the APO, and we can have those conversations as we talk about the reclassification or redoing the functional classification of the roadway network within the APO planning area. And that process should be starting pretty shortly. I know we had just gone through consultant selection, but I think that is a key part, again, to open up some more doors for funding options for those agencies.
Great, thank you. Yes.
I'll comment on
Commissioner
322nd as well. Yeah. And that road has taken a tremendous amount of, lack of a better word, abuse, just in that we closed it, the roundabout at 133 in County Road 4, and that was used for a lot of rerouted traffic. But now with Bridge 75 being closed and the traffic coming into St. Cloud too, that roadway is also getting hammered by all that
That's
traffic.
why I was on
into
it.
St. Cloud. It was coming in as well. So no question about it being in bad shape, and somehow I hope we can get that resolved.
I do want to point out our posted detours are not on 322nd.
I know. This was Google Maps. I didn't go down the way I normally did on purpose because I keep hearing about it. And I thought, all right, I should go on a little quick field trip. So appreciate that. Lee, did you have a question for Jody? I thought you.
Yeah, just wondering if the unusual weather patterns here have made some construction issues a little bit easier. The question I get at coffee occasionally is County Road 75 west of Wade Park. And June is the proposed date for completion on that. Is that still valid?
We are hoping, certain things just take a certain amount of time, concrete cure time,
Yeah.
et cetera. But we are hoping that if this warm trend continues, I'm sorry to the snowmobilers and ice fishermen
Yeah.
and women out there, but if it continues, and I certainly hope it does, we're hoping that that concrete overlay that would go on the bridge, which, and the concrete paving that's immediately adjacent to it, would be able to be done sooner than we had originally anticipated. By the spec book, it's got to be at least mid-April before that concrete overlay can be done. But we're hopeful that this is speeding up the process. Right now, it's a little bit of speculation and slightly ahead of schedule, but I can't guarantee anything. Certainly, the freeze-thaw cycles, it does get cold at night, so we've got to watch that whenever we pour concrete as well. The other thing that I related, but kind of not, people ask if this is going to be much better for the roads this season. The problem with that is we have more freeze-thaw cycles when it gets warmer. So generally that tends to be worse on the cracks and the potholes when you have, instead of it just staying cold, it warms up and then it freezes again. And that continually happens. That generally is worse on our pavements. We'll see. We're not seeing immediate problems just yet, but so that impacts everything, those multiple freeze-thaw cycles that we are going through.
Great.
All right, thank you.
All right. Really quick. Yes.
Okay, Jody, we have a meeting tomorrow evening. I don't know if you want to let the board know what's going on there with the Beltway.
Certainly. You've all probably heard about the Beltway Road or the Beltline Road. It's been called the Ring Road, a million different things over the last 25 years that would go around and bypass the St. Cloud area for those that need to get around St. Cloud and don't necessarily need to go through. So the APO Policy Board with members of the Technical Advisory Committee are meeting tomorrow, probably around 5:15 for a start time. And they'll be discussing the viability or the feasibility of actually pursuing this and, pursuing it in sections. Are we truly going to get a full ring road, and how important that is to the APO Policy Board in general? So if there are opinions, Commissioner Persky, of course, is the representative on there, certainly share those with him. I think the discussions will go into if it's a piece by piece and just see what we can get done, or if we truly want to look at the full vision of a full ring road around the entire area.
And I guess my 2 cents I'll throw in is not repeating the mistakes that happened with St. Cloud, because it right now would go through Sartell. And that's, since given how fast Sartell is growing, seems to be a continued problem. So the vision from 25 years ago maybe is a little outdated. So I know that you're working on that, but for the public, I think they can't quite always figure out how do things that sound like they're going to solve a problem end up. In this case, it's not even going to be an unintended consequence, because it will be a consequence.
Yeah. And of course, a large piece of that is the river crossing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I use the one further north of that. That would be, if you really want to go around it, go north. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Members, we're going to take a brief 5-minute meeting. We're a little bit behind, but not much, and really good questions this morning. So for the people in the back room, we are in recess. the next component of our agenda is Randy Schreifels. You're going to be talking about the presidential nomination primary, and we need a couple board members for the canvas board.
Yes, that's correct. The canvassing will be March 8th at 9 o'clock at the Service Center, and we need 2 county commissioners, and all county commissioners are eligible. So,
Right, and that's because nobody's got it's only the presidential.
yep.
So who's available and interested in doing it?
I guess I'd be around to
Okay.
do it.
Good, so 9 o'clock. Anybody else? Lee, are you available, or Jeff? Or Joe's gonna be somewhere else?
I am not
Okay, give me
available.
the dates and time again.
March 8th at 9 a.m. I'm not sure, are you even available then, Jeff?
I am not.
Okay, that's what I thought. Lee, can you do it?
No, but I will.
You will, good. No, normally I came in prepared to say I was interested in doing it, because I think it's I don't know, I had a grandmother who was a
Where?
deputy registrar and liked doing
the
that
Service
stuff,
Center.
but I've got a conflict that day for a county-related thing. Okay, so it sounds like Commissioner Notch and Commissioner Lensmeyer. Do we need to vote on that, or is it?
We do need a
Okay,
motion,
so
yep.
I need a motion for us to appoint Commissioner Notch and Commissioner Lensmeyer.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion. Is there a
Okay.
second?
I'll second.
I'm gonna,
Okay, I think we've got
it's like volunteering.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Excellent. Opposed, same sign. All right, we have 2 members for March 8th at 9 a.m. Thank you. All right, so then next over to Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, alongside the procurement process for the professional services of an architectural firm to help us through our Justice Center process, we also we did a process to select the construction manager. And it's taken us a little longer to come to a final agreement with the construction manager than we did with the architect. But Mr. Cornick is here today with members of the construction manager team that we're recommending, and I'm just going to turn it over to Kevin then.
Good morning, Kevin Cornick, Facilities Manager for Stearns County. Joining me today, I have Dustin Phillips with Kraus Anderson Construction, Mark Cotton with Kraus Anderson Construction, and Pete Filippi with Contegrity Group. These 2 companies have partnered up and submitted a proposal for the construction management piece of our Justice Center project. So, next slide, please. So, as you recall, the process back in August 22nd, the board authorized staff to go out for a request for qualifications for both an architect and a construction manager. That RFQ really spelled out the history of where we started, where we're at, kind of tried to paint that picture and give these folks an idea of maybe where we were in the process, what kind of things they could bring forward to help us get to the next steps and keep the project moving. So the advisory committee reviewed the initial submissions and then created a short list for in-person interviews. So the firms were scored using the same evaluation criteria for both the written submission and the in-person interview. The scores were modified. And then the committee agreed to start negotiations with the top scoring firms. Like I said, the RFQ consisted of 2 parts. It really focused on 4 key areas. So obviously the firm's past performance and professional references were an important piece. The team qualifications, the individual members that each company was proposing to bring onto the project and their related experience. The project understanding was of particular importance to our group just because there's a lot here. You guys know as well as everybody, there's a lot of parts and pieces and a lot of decisions with nuances, and really wanted to make sure that the firm did the homework and understood what we needed from them. So, and then building on that was a project approach. Tell us what you're gonna do for us or what we can expect from you. So specific to the construction manager request, 3 firms submitted a response to the request for qualifications. Of those three, two were selected for in-person interviews. Those selected firms were required to provide cost information that was kept under seal until a top scoring firm was selected. Once that process was done, then those pricing pieces were open. So we entered negotiations with the top scoring firm, which was Kraus Anderson Construction, and then worked to establish a scope of work, cost, and terms. The final proposed contract has been reviewed by the advisory committee and is just finishing a review in the county attorney's office, along with some consultation with MCIT. And so we're here today to request the board approve that contract with Kraus Anderson, with the caveat that staff is authorized to negotiate a few final terms as it relates to some exhibit language and some insurance language. So significant items in the contract, it spells out a stipulated sum for the pre-design phase, the schematic design phase for the two separate sites, one being downtown, one being an alternative site. And then a stipulated sum for the pre-construction. So basically from that stipulated or schematic design all the way to putting a shovel in the ground. And then from that shovel in the ground and beyond, it's a percentage fee plus reimbursables. And that percentage fee is based on a term called the cost of the work, which in this case is generally about 85% of the whole value. It takes out things such as contingency and insurance costs, cost of land, those kinds of things. So the county, similar to the architect's agreement, has the right to terminate the agreement for its convenience at any time. We're 7 days notice, and we can end the contract with them without penalty. And then the insurance requirements were increased just due to the size and scope of the project, and that was an MCIT request. So next slide, please. So this is a breakdown of the fee structure. Like I said, those first pre-construction phase items, the preliminary design, schematic design, design development, are on a stipulated sum of $425,000. The construction phase is 1.45% of the cost of the work plus reimbursables. And those reimbursables kick in when you put a shovel in the ground. That covers things such as site supervision, project management during construction, some office staff support, and then all the things you need to build a project. Think job site trailers, equipment rental, fuel, temp heat, shelter, all those different parts and pieces you need just to get something constructed. So those things will come into a lot more clarity as the project progresses. So when you get to the end of design development, we should have a really good idea what the construction management fee is going to be for a dollar value, and then what those reimbursables will be. So that cost will develop over time. So again, this kind of breaks down that what cost of work is from contract language standpoint. It's really based on the budget, and the budget is the number that the county board controls. So at different points along the way, the contract actually requires the board to act to advance the project to the next step and to approve a budget. And that budget has points where it needs to be approved, but it can be changed at any point along the way. So the county board controls that in its entirety. So, and then the reimbursables, a little bit of a description there. And in most cases, that reimbursables, once we get a little further down the road and we have a more concrete idea of what we're doing, where we're doing it, we can look to even do a not to exceed at that point if we wanted a little more security at that point. So similar to the architect's conversation we had, one of the questions that came up was, at what point does the board have the ability to, put the stop on, or do we move to the next step or not? So what I tried to do here is paint a little bit of a picture. So right now we're working in that pre-design step with the architect, and in order for that process to move to a schematic design, I would be here looking for some board action to approve that to happen. So at this point, we would be paying them $25,000 to take the pre-design work that the architect is doing and start applying some costs to that. And then parallel to that was the operational cost side of, what is this thing gonna run over 30 years? And those are things that this team can answer for us. And then we would be back in front of you looking for direction on where to go from there, so. And like I said, at any point in this process, we have the ability to change or move or cancel should it become necessary, but these are the built-in stops at this point, so. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to this group for a little bit of an introduction of who they are and what they're bringing to the table, so.
Thank you, welcome.
Hi there. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of the council today. My name is Mark Cotton. Been with KA for, it's going on 28 years now, mainly working in the government aspect of things, city and county work. I grew up in Belgrade, Minnesota, so it's kind of nice to be back home in the area too. So Pete, maybe
Pete Filippi with Contegrity Group. Been working in the field of construction management for a better part of 30 years. Most of our workload has been in the county government sector, so we've been around a while. We're located in Little Falls, Minnesota, just short stint up the road.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Dustin Phillips. I would be a senior project manager for you on the project. I don't have the 20 to 30 years, but I've been with Kraus Anderson for just over 12 years now, in the industry for 16. So looking forward to hopefully helping you bring this to the next steps.
All right, next slide, please.
Sorry, I guess I can control that one.
Yeah. Go ahead. Just want to introduce you to some of the team members that aren't here today, but we're part of the interview process. Dustin, you've met him. Larry, he works with Contegrity. He's a senior project manager. He'll be involved in the project. Eric Qualm, project manager. Travis, project manager. Jack Brunsick, he'll be the superintendent, one of the superintendents on site, depending on which option goes and how it comes to. These are the team members that are available, so as we walk through this. Mike, superintendent from Contegrity. Myself will be involved. Pete, he's project director, kind of acting as the same role as I am. And then Chris Toma, he's part of Elk Creek Consulting, and he'll be working on our team kind of as we walk through the schematic design development, and into CD documents to make sure that all the Department of Justice stuff is getting handled within that. Next slide, please. Also, Kraus Anderson kind of brings to the table a lot of different resources too. Adi Miller, he leads our pre-construction group, and Dustin will talk a little bit more on the pre-construction side of things, but we have a robust pre-construction group to make sure that this thing comes in budget on whatever budget you choose to. Kyle Gao, internally he's a mechanical engineer. He kind of takes a look at drawings through in schematic in the pre-design phase and design development, just to make sure that the systems are there. John Porter, we have a structural engineer in-house who helps with the building science, which is pretty much the building envelope, just to make sure that all the different materials that are on the building, whether it be glass or brick or the roofing or flashing or aluminum panels or whatever may happen, kind of come together. Andrea Blair, she's in charge of our BIM, building information modeling. She does a lot with regards to capturing as-built, and as things go through, we have drones and different 360 cameras to help with that process. Kevin Bright, he's our sustainability manager, and what he really helps is try to figure out how the Inflation Reduction Act and different types of maybe grants that are out there to help to see if we can actually come up with some ideas that could save the county money. Jenna Mead, director of marketing and referendum planning, so she will be a part as you go out for your tax referendum services when you vote on the taxes. So, and then we've got our Jay Vanderleest, who's our director of safety, and instrumental part of construction is making sure that we're safe on the job site. So with that, I'll turn it over to Pete. I think you're.
Yep. The map you see kind of colors in the counties that we have been able to represent. One special note is in many of those counties there are multiple projects. Feel very blessed with the combined resume that we're bringing to the table with the amount of county government experience we have. Combined, we have over 1,750 jail beds we have built in the state. over half the counties in the state of Minnesota have secured services from either Kraus or ourselves at Integrity. Long-standing member with the Minnesota counties. And at the same time, also part of the MSA, the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. So with that being said, we bring a wealth of experience and hope to put those talents to work for you. The next slide, I know Mark touched on it briefly, was the introduction of Chris Toma. We currently have Chris Toma as part of our contract, and Chris's background is starting off in the trenches as a jail administrator. Worked heavily then afterwards with the Department of Corrections, where he was an employee rewriting the 2900 standards, which is the construction rule for jail construction. I was fortunate enough to sit on that committee as well with the Department of Corrections for the better part of 10 years in the development of it, which worked out well. At the same time too, it's another set of eyes as we're going through this pre-design, pre-construction phase to hopefully provide some efficiencies in the space and just another back check on what's being developed. And the last one, local understanding. Being born and raised in Morrison County, having worked quite a bit in central Minnesota, we have a very good understanding of the contractor workforce in the area. Done multiple projects with many people that reside in Stearns County. Potential packaging these up to make sure that they have ample opportunity to secure some of this work. And at the same time, have built a good relationship with them. And that is key moving forward.
Dustin, do you want to take the pre-con?
Yeah, so thanks. So we'll jump right into pre-construction. As Kevin mentioned, right out of the gate, we're going to be working alongside the architectural firm to help set up estimating and overall project budgets. How we do these estimates is going to be unique, specifically for Stearns. It's not a one-size-fits-all. So I'll be working with Kevin and the team, as well as the design team and other folks within the county, to make sure how we're developing and presenting that information is in a useful manner. Those detailed estimates get into the weeds, and we try to make sure as we're bubbling that up that we get to summary sheets and everything else, but you're gonna have all the different levels of detail at your disposal. These are living documents too, so even though, I guess Kevin mentioned there's specific points in time where we'll be coming back for approval on schematic design and design development and construction documents. If there's changes that happen as design meetings progress through each of those individual sections of work, we will be updating those budgets so that we can make informed decisions on if we're looking at a certain type of material or exterior enclosure or roof system, that we're keeping costs in mind at all times when we're walking through design. Those are easily managed through alternative options too. If there's certain things that we just don't know today, but we want to carry it forward, we have ways to break that out within our estimates and overall budget to present multiple different options for decisions to get made. And again, we'll make sure that we're scheduling all of these activities to make sure they're in line with the milestones that we have for the project. Just a little bit about us as we move out of pre-construction. As Mark mentioned, you know, we try to make sure we're building with safety in mind, and that doesn't start when you put a shovel in the ground. That starts when you're walking through design. So making sure we're building in safety access points for our sites, not only during pre-construction, but also through construction. We'll be working on a disruption avoidance plan depending upon what option gets chosen, make sure that it's site-specific. And then also making sure throughout construction that we're involving folks that want to come on group tours and see the progress that's happening on site. We're proud as a group between us that you could see here our EMR rate, which is our emergency modification rate. Usually below 1 is good, and we're sitting at half of that right now. So from an EMR and a safety rating for contractors, we're very proud of where we sit ranking as a safe contractor. And then a little bit bringing it down into substantial completion. So these were things that would happen towards the tail end of construction, but making sure we'll be facilitating the training for the folks within the county that need to be trained on the certain systems, whether it's level of maintenance for care of the products that are installed or the equipment that's installed. Tracking and coordinating all the as-built drawings and operations and maintenance manuals, which are those O&M manuals. And also, we don't just leave and go away. We will be scheduling the minute we walk away an 11-month walkthrough, which is your typical 1-year warranty span on the job, to make sure that anything that's found over the first year of operating that facility, that we're coming back and correcting that and facilitating those corrections. So bottom line, we're not going anywhere from now and into the future. And one of the most important pieces for construction is making sure we're properly communicating that. And you'll see how pre-construction as we work alongside your team. But as you get into construction, doing our daily job site huddles, our construction updates. We will be making sure we're working hand in hand with any of the facilities and county construction staff that's involved on the job. We'll have our weekly job site construction progress meetings, and you'll be getting a monthly update as a whole on the project, whether that's schedule related, budget related. Here's where we're at and here's where we're going on the project. So that's just a little bit in communication and more to follow as we actually put life to these documents too. That's all. We thank you very much and look forward to taking your questions.
Questions, members? Commissioner Notch.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Just one question in regards to reimbursable costs. Is there an average percent that ends up being over all projects? I mean, it seems like it's kind of open checkbook or request, but there's got to be a number that is an average of what that is, correct?
There is an average, but it can be skewed. And feel free to jump in here, Mark and Pete, too. A lot of, for a construction company and their reimbursables expenses, a lot revolves around time. So if, like, for instance, if you're building on a brand new greenfield site, you're gonna be able to put things in a lot quicker than a multi-phased downtown site. So these are things that as we look at the two options, we'll be pricing them accordingly. You can be between 5-7%, depending upon what a project looks like, but that can very easily get off skewed if your project runs for 6 years in lieu of 3 years. So a lot of our reimbursable expenses are time driven. All of the rates for what those folks are and are already developed, and those are out there, so those won't change as you move into the future. But a lot of it's time driven, so it's going to be scheduled to what the project actually is. But to use as a rule of thumb to give you some guardrails there, it's usually between 5 and 7% as it relates to those.
Great. Commissioner Notch, follow up.
So then tied into that, so then the 1.45, so once you know what the cost of the work, then that's just a set fee?
That's a set fee, correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Had a similar question on that. Other members? Commissioner Bertram? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Lensmeyer, and then we'll go to you, Commissioner Bertram. Go ahead, Lee.
Yeah, while this is very preliminary and it's not specifically oriented to your part of the project, I do want all parties aware that once the project is up and done, we've got operational costs. Now, I think we're passing by an opportunity. Folks come in when they pitch us on their various aspects of their services, are certainly more than willing to feature all the experience they've had at this. Well, I hope, well, I'm going to pout about this throughout the process, but I would be interested in the impact of various design features on operating costs. And there's two parts to every project. It's people and stuff. And the presentation we get at this point, obviously, maybe not so obviously, is more oriented on the stuff part. But I want to start seeing at least some reference to the impact of on operating costs. I don't know how the hell you build efficiencies into a jail complex, but to the extent it's possible, I hope you hold a thought. In addition, over the life of the project, operating costs, in terms of total cost, are half of the total cost. Yeah, the construction number is certainly big enough to get our attention. But if you got any ideas on impacts on labor costs or design features that do that, I'd certainly appreciate either highlighting or incorporating those features into this project.
Thank you. I don't know which one of you wants to respond. If you could respond with saying your name again, because unfortunately they're not in our agenda, so I can't do the appropriate calling on you by name. I apologize for that.
Pete Filippi, Contegrity Group, and Commissioner, words well spoken, because a lot of times the operational costs of the facility are kind of pushed on the backside. A couple things that play into it, especially from our aspect going through, is the addition of our team to Chris Toma from Elk Creek Consulting, as far as the staffing of this. We all know it's a 24/7 operation, and one additional post is 5 full-time equivalents. At the same time, besides the staffing, sight lines and things of that nature are very important. We know that we're constrained by the Department of Corrections with indirect supervision of a 1-to-40 inmate ratio. Open dormitories, which we don't see as much anymore, are 1-to-60s. And of course, you've got your special management. So some of the hallway configurations, the sight lines are very critical. At the same time, the other forgotten element is the mechanical systems and how they're laid out. For staff to actually put mechanical systems, valves, dampers, and things of that within a cell block, where you know that in order to get a person in to fix these, shuts a cell block down, very staff intensive. We will heavily involve Kevin's staff in the design of this, as far as where those locations are for shutoffs, filter changeouts, things of that nature. And at the same time, I know you're vetting down a couple different paths, green site or downtown, but the layout of that building, for example, small stuff, food service. You'll have food trucks coming to that facility every day. You don't want to place your kitchen halfway through the middle of the jail where all of a sudden we need staff time to route the product. It should be easily deliverable, along with a lot of the consumables that are used, toilet paper and things of that nature, where it can be easily unloaded, stored, and efficiently dispersed. Those are the small things that I think we can bring to the table just with past experience, but thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you. Did anybody else have anything to add on that one? Are we good? Okay, Commissioner Bertram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin, how do we manage that there's not overlap between the architects and some of the things I read? There seems to be just a little bit of overlap of what we've kind of asked the architects to do and potentially what the construction manager would do. How do we manage that, or how do you manage that?
Mr. Kornick.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, that's a great question. And the way we've addressed it, and this is right into both contracts, we sat both of these parties down in the same room with, probably a 30 line item thing of, what are you doing? Who's owning it? Who's helping? Try to really establish that roles and responsibilities. And we think I think we all can agree we've hit a good agreement on what the architect is responsible for, and in areas where they're going to assist, and then also on areas where they're going to run point, and maybe the county has to run more of an assistance role. But you're right, there are areas of this where they're going to be doing some of the same things. In particular, on the marketing side, there's some overlap there. But I think they're coming at it from two different directions, and I think both of those directions are good to have. So, I don't think we're paying for a lot of overlap that we maybe don't want. We've tried to address that right in the contract language. So,
are you coordinating on that, the marketing pieces where there might be some? Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely. There's we've had quite a few meetings with this team and the architect in the same room, and these are the things we need, and who's running point and who's helping and to what extent. So.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Bertram.
Madam Chair, thank you, Kevin, for that. Madam Chair, thank you, Kevin, for that. The biggest concern is, as I've shared with this group before, is my concern about who's taking responsibility for who. No matter how well we all do this, we know there's going to be mistakes. And my sensitivity has always been, having been involved in state bonding projects or whatever, when it doesn't work out 100%, everybody's pointing the finger to somebody else. The architects blame the construction manager blames a subcontractor or whatever, and the issue doesn't get taken care of. The roof still leaks. And so as we approach this, again, this is no, what do you want to call it? I'm not assuming anything, but again, for us to be proactive and make sure that there is accountability, we need to make sure to continue to put whoever made decisions and what are we going to do if something happens and who's going to be responsible for that. I think that's huge because, again, this is a big project. And as I've said before, none of us have been involved in this. Certainly the architects and the construction manager will have been, but mistakes are made, things happen, and we have to have a recourse for those. And I'll keep pushing for that. And then the 1.45%. So if I'm getting this right, let's just say it's a $300 million project for the costs of work. Obviously, that would be $4.5 million. Or am I misunderstanding that?
Mr. Cornick?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bertram, you're on the right path. That cost of work, when I'll just pick the alternative site, one of the options that we had from the previous study. When you back out all the things that aren't included in that cost of work, on that $272 million concept, the cost of work was about $238 million. And then that percentage would apply to that $238 million, so.
Got it.
Yep.
And Madam Chair, and again, helpful just to have the most specific numbers that we can have. One, because we need to know that. Two, the public needs to know that we've been asking that. And three, we all have to hold each other accountable. No doubt about that. When the staff, Madam Chair, authorizes the final terms, when we authorize staff to do the final, we're still going to see that before final approval, aren't we?
I believe the answer to that is yes. I've seen nodding. Anybody want to respond to that?
I would anticipate a series of approvals, Jeff. I would anticipate, if not this group of people, certainly people involved in the project on a periodic basis here. So I don't think this is one and done type of a presentation.
And Madam Chair, thank you. Commissioner Lenzemeyer taught me a long time ago never to assume. And so that's why I asked the question.
Well, it's good to be asking. And there's a couple more things in the room here. So I want to give you a breather just for a second because I think there's both some responses to a couple of the questions you brought up. And I do want to thank you for helping us understand how you're reducing risk, spreading what it could look like in terms of liability, and how we're reducing potential errors, and I think that was part of what Commissioner Bertram was getting at. Dr. Williams, do you have something specifically on one of these two? And I know Commissioner Persky's been waiting for a little bit.
I do an answer to that question. We did not anticipate bringing anything back to the board after this for any final approval, but as Mr. Cornick was suggesting, as we go through the stages, you're gonna have other approval points where we will continue this contract then.
So if for some reason, this is for the public, because we all are concerned about this, if we start seeing costs looking much different than we're anticipating right now, that would come back to us, wouldn't it? Because I think we actually would want to see that. We're all very cost conscious about this very large jail justice center project. And you all, hopefully you're not hearing anything diminishing your experience. It's really great to be partnering, with people who really know what they're doing. But that's part of our role, right? Do you want to address any of that, Dr. Williams, or somebody else, and then we'll?
Madam Chair, I'll add that the changes that we're working through on the contract right now really, we're down to making sure that our numbering system is in the right spot. We have one attachment that it's actually the roles and responsibilities that Jeff or Commissioner Bertram had talked about, and finding, the contract has different slots. You can slide that in for different meetings, and it's just kind of figuring out which is the right slot to slide that. I would absolutely bring this back to the board for approval if any of the fee structure or any of that changed, absolutely.
So I think what I'm hearing you say, and I haven't forgotten you, Joe, is that in approving this today, you have worked out most everything. There's some small items to further reduce any potential duplication, and if something major was unexpected, you'd come back.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. From that standpoint, then, members, that might modify some questions. Thank you. That's really helpful, Joe.
And then
Mr. Persky?
My question is termination and the end of your Kevin, I don't want to have you at the end have a list of things that need to get done because they weren't finished at the end, whether it's planting trees, striping the
Me either.
parking lot, you know, there's fascia that wasn't, you know, quite right. When does their obligation end?
So their contractual obligation ends. So most of your construction contracts have a 1-year warranty period from a date of substantial completion. That's the date that this team and the board establishes as, okay, construction's pretty much done. At the 11-month mark, this team is required to come back and walk that building end to end.
So if you have that punch card list.
Commissioner Persky.
Yep. And so their contract doesn't end until that punch card is complete. And that doesn't matter if it's 18 months after construction or 2 years after construction. If there's an open item on that list, their contract is enforced.
Okay. Other questions or comments? And yes, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the contract award for the Jail Justice Center construction manager as advisor to Kraus Anderson Construction Company with the amounts we've been given. Anybody else, any further questions? And you may be hearing from us because we're going to be, you know, we know we're not the subject matter experts, but as we get questions out and about, we want to be well equipped and do our due diligence. I hope that's what you're hearing. Commissioner Bertram.
One last question, Madam Chair, to Randy and Mike. In the second last paragraph of the board action report, it says the construction will either, the payment will be done through the sales tax or levy dollars. Why are we saying levy dollars? Is that because if the tax doesn't pass, or?
Well, certainly the board has
Mr.
an
Schreifels.
option come after November what you want to do, right? So this doesn't end, this could stay in effect if you desire at that point, but, right, the board's going to have an option depending on what happens in November, right?
Dr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Bertram, I think what we're referring to there is we're going to incur costs both with the architect and with the construction manager prior to having the referendum. So if we don't have sales tax dollars, we would at least have to consider using other budget measures to make those payments. Of course, that's another decision point in the process too.
So to confirm, I think to clarify, right now, it's really about the design development in anticipation that there would be some construction. If the voters vote no, then we have a decision to make about how that part would be paid. But the design part, if the sales tax, didn't go through, then would go on levy. Is that what you're, okay. I'm seeing nods, Jeff. I don't know if you can see that.
I did not, but Madam Chair, then that's just a final question is,
Yeah,
then
no,
tell
you're
me
good.
we have a plan B. I mean, we have that levy plan in motion or place, and we will find out something about that at some point so that we're at least aware of it if it goes that direction.
Correct. I think the language that you see there is more of an assurance to those that we are employing that they will get paid even if the referendum
Yeah,
doesn't.
it's kind of an important
even if the
thing.
referendum fails.
Yeah.
That's a very important piece. Even if we go and then stop and then have to recalibrate, you all would be getting paid. Kind of an important piece. Any other questions or comments? And if not, looking for a motion. Motion to approve, to authorize, I'm making sure I've got the language right again, approve the contract award for the construction manager.
I'll go ahead and make that motion for that first step.
Great, thank you. Need a second?
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. For the public, it's just sometimes when you only have a few people that are doing this, you just have to wait sometimes a few seconds to figure out who's doing it. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of approving the contract award for the Jail Justice Center contract manager as advisor to Kraus Anderson Construction Company, signify by saying aye. Aye. Jeff?
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed, same sign? Okay.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
awarded. Thank
We'll
you.
do a
Thank
good job
you.
for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for helping us in our community
Doesn't mean
with
we
these
won't complain.
complications. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, we'll see you again. Dr. Williams, is there anything else as we're coming to the conclusion of this meeting?
Kevin.
Okay. Okay, let's get through issues by commissioner. Do you have any issues by commissioner? Commissioner Persky?
Let's see, do I have anything, other than, we have a trip going out to DC. The three of us are going to be out there along with Melissa Huberty. And so, looking forward to that on the national level, meeting with colleagues and taking a look at some of the local needs that we hope to perhaps bring some funding for. And
Yeah,
other than that,
definitely.
I don't have anything.
Okay, great. Commissioner Notch?
Yeah, just maybe a comment here. February 20th, I won't be at the Minnesota AMC's Ledge Conference, and there's MRC, Minnesota Rural Counties meeting that evening on the February 20th.
What's meeting?
The
Minnesota Rural Counties.
Counties. Jeff, will you be back for that? I'm sure several of us will go in that meeting, but if you're here for that, since Steve can't be there, would you be able to sit at the big kids table?
I am.
All right.
Okay.
That doesn't mean the rest of us won't come. No, thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, other than that, that is the only thing I have.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Commissioner Bertram,
Nothing, Madam Chair. Thank you.
besides soaking some good weather in for us, hopefully. We appreciate
Well,
it.
I'm looking out the window and it's really, really nice. So I'm
Yeah, we're
looking forward
almost
to
done.
getting
We'll,
this
we'll
over with.
release you here, Commissioner Lensmeyer.
Want to take a trip down memory lane?
If as long as it's short. Oh.
I can't read the top part.
It's Joanne Benson.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm getting to the bottom of my t-shirt.
Well, that was an interesting issue by Commissioner. We hope you are able to get your laundry done, although that's a good t-shirt.
Well,
any other
the
issues?
primary launderer in our household is talking right now. So
Oh, there you go.
It's about getting my button gear.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, it's not directly related to governor, reminding everybody that voting is open right now for the presidential primary. You can do that through mail. In many places, that's your main way. There's opportunities to come in person, and that will go through Super Tuesday, right? March 5th. So we want to encourage people to do that. Also want to remind people, if you are interested in serving on the board for our new housing trust fund, to get your applications in. I think there's been some question or potential opportunity. We don't have to do this now. Instead of adding 2 members, can we add another from the community? Do we add more? But we probably need to wait and see how many apps we've got.
As a county, what's in it for us?
What?
This.
The thing we've passed? I think hopefully some better partnerships to get some more housing that works for people. So I'm just bringing up that, just to remind people, we've gotten several applications, but you're able to do that. Good question, Lee. Anything else that I'm missing right now?
Nah.
All right, then we are adjourned. And Commissioner